Welcome to the first of these 3 webinars. This one's looking at cyber threats and information security. And then just to let you know that this session will be recorded because it's going to be going on to the website so that people that can't make this session will be able to find out the information at a later date.
Rachel has her hand up.
Yes, Rachel.
Just to say, just so that other people are talking, not just you, Helen. No specific threats or anything we've come across. For us, we don't have a business continuity plan in place, so this came at the perfect time because I'd been tasked with pulling one together. So really looking forward to this series of webinars, so thank you.
Great. Okay, I'll get started. Well, welcome to the webinar. As I said, this is the first of a series of 3 looking at cyber threats and information security. Now, it's part of a bigger project. I'm Helen Molyneux. I am Director of Cambridge Risk Solutions and Risk Ready, which are Cambridge Risk is a consulting company in information security and business continuity, and Risk Ready does e-learning. And I've been engaged by the Leicestershire and Rutland Local Resilience Forum to help them to develop some better tools for businesses to use to help improve their resilience. So we've developed the tools, and then there's 3 webinars just to give some more specific information. So there's the forum. So what I'm going to do today is going to give a little bit of background for us talking about cyber security and information security, talk a little bit about protection and what businesses can actually do to protect themselves, and then go a little bit into response. But what I'm going to do first is announce that we have done a lot of work with the Local Resilience Forum website, done a lot of work to update it and put some business tools up there, so that when you now go to the website and click on Prepare Your Business, we have Risk Ready Businesses. This gives plenty of information to help businesses prepare themselves. So, for example, there's some information there on business risks, which also has a link to some videos to give you some background on local risks, as well as some information on business continuity itself and how to develop a business continuity plan. So there is a template that businesses can download, a free template that you can populate. But there's also, if I click on this link, it'll show you, there's a list of videos, just little short 2-minute videos that will give you the background so that you will be able to create your own business continuity plan. So if I move that back over there. So this is just showing some of the information that we have. And there's a picture of the business risks page, and it's looking at those 7 key risks that have been identified for the area and some of the key things that businesses should do as part of preparing themselves and bolstering their resilience. So there's some points about preparation, there's things you could do during an incident, and then things for after the incident. And then, as I showed you, the business continuity videos. Each of them are just a couple of minutes, and they just give you a bit of the background. So what I'm going to do first, just to get a bit of an understanding of the sectors that you work in, it'd be helpful if you could let me know what sector you're in, just so that I know who's online.
Helen, we've got here 2 answers. One from Martha saying psychotherapy service, and Adam is saying manufacturing.
Great, thank you very much indeed. Okay. Right, I'll go to the next slide. Oh yes, brilliant, fabulous. Sorry, I'm recovering from a cold. And then also, what sort of size businesses do you actually have? Great. So the tools that we have developed are designed for the SME sector and should be ideal for businesses that are 1 to 9 people, as well as up to 249. 250 tend to get a bit more complicated and therefore need slightly more detailed plans. Okay, cybersecurity, information security, the terms are often used interchangeably. So I think it would be helpful first for me just to explain that cybersecurity is talking about digital systems. It's talking about computers, it's talking about networks, whereas information security is all forms of security, all forms of information, sorry. So paper, physical, so ensuring your buildings are secure and ensuring your documents are secure. So it's much more holistic. And both of them are essential for business resilience. So essentially, cybersecurity is a sector of information security, and it tends to get most of the focus. And I think that's because people tend to be quite scared of computing and what computing can do, particularly if it goes wrong. But you must remember that information security is much, much broader, and therefore you should think about things more broadly. So if we look at some examples of cybersecurity in particular, so obviously I think we'll all have seen about Marks and Spencer's, 46 days with no online services, huge hit to the profits, and their systems were accessed through a supplier. Another recent example was JLR. They had a 5-week production stoppage and still weren't back to normal levels for over 10 weeks. In actual fact, one of my clients is one of their suppliers of critical services. And laughably, about 4 weeks ago, JLR actually approached my client to ask about my client's information security arrangements, which caused my client quite a lot of hilarity, given we'd have to shut down our systems to protect them from JLR JLR systems causing problems. Co-op had a theft of personal data from all of its members. And again, lots of empty shelves in the co-op, and their IT networks were infiltrated by hackers. Cloudflare is sort of one of those things that operates in the background, and they've had a significant number of outages over 2025. Interestingly, tending to happen when they applied updates. But because Cloudflare goes down, it impacts the likes of LinkedIn and Zoom and AWS. So even though it's totally without an individual's control because it's something happening in the background, it just shows how these things can just ricochet out and impact people, even though they don't realize that they're using something like Cloudflare. Other people that had problems in 2025, and you'll see they're quite big players who theoretically know an awful lot about information security and cybersecurity. So the likes of Amazon Web Services, Azure, so Microsoft, Google, Starlink, PlayStation, they've all had major problems in 2025. But also it's not just the big players. We woke up on Boxing Day a couple of years ago to find that our website was just displaying a great big Iranian flag, and somebody had got in and tackled our website. So it isn't just the big players that are at risk. Thankfully, we didn't do anything commercial on our website at that point, so it was just the embarrassment of our website being taken over, but it does happen. So as I've said, cybersecurity is a subset of information security, and information security does cover broader risks, which includes paper records and physical security. So what I'm going to ask you is, how much do you think you actually know about information security, and how so we can assess how confident that you feel? Oh, I can go home and let you carry on with the presentation. So we have a couple of you feeling quite confident, which is great. Next to nothing. Well, hopefully you'll feel a little bit more confident by the end of this presentation. So information security addresses three key elements, easiest remembered by the acronym CIA. So confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So confidentiality, can only the right people see the information? Is it secret? Is it protected from other people viewing that information? So, for example, businesses might have a footer on the document saying confidential. What does that actually mean? Does it mean that when you've emailed it out, and you've got no control over who's seeing that document, even though it says confidential, is that going to be a concern? And this isn't just about things like personal data. It might be company IP. It might be financial records. It might be financial data, bank accounts, where you want things to stay secret and only the people that need to see it can see it. Integrity is about protecting documents, protecting data, so it doesn't get altered, it doesn't get amended. So, for example, people tend to share PDFs rather than Word documents because it's much harder to change a PDF. But it's also about integrity of computer data. So, for example, when systems have been hacked and you've had ransomware, if you've got your data back, do you actually know if that data is still the same data that they stole? Has it been changed? Has it been altered? So integrity of data is absolutely key. And then the final bit is availability. So is it available at the point in which you need it? And the example that the Information Commissioner's Office give, for example, when they're talking about data protection, they give the example of a patient on the operating table. Are there records there when you need them when they're on the operating table? So confidentiality, integrity, and availability are the key considerations for information security. So if we burrow down a little bit more and look at cyber, so just the IT side of it, how would you rate your cyber security knowledge? Okay. Right, that's interesting. Well, hopefully I'm not here today to talk about the technical aspects of it. I'm not a technical expert. I don't do code. However, I'm going to hopefully give you some of the skills to be able to implement some basic techniques, but also tell you where to look to get further information. So, cybersecurity, the risks, the government are doing an awful lot at the moment around small businesses. And the key risks that they think that SMEs are facing is what they call phishing and social engineering attacks, ransomware and malware, data breaches and loss, and insider threats. And those are the 4 key areas that have been identified as the main risks facing SMEs. And I'm going to go into each of those in turn. So phishing and social engineering. This is when you get your spam email where the emailer is pretending to be a bank or a key supplier or one of your colleagues, and they're trying to trick you into clicking links, opening attachments, or sharing that information. And this is basically exploiting human behavior because humans are inherently quite trusting. It's not just limited to emails. You get texts, you get phone calls, social media messages. I mean, I've had one today telling me about the fact I can claim for mis-selling of car loans. I had a phone call yesterday from Virgin Media telling me that they could give me money off my phone bill, and I've never had a phone with Virgin Media. Often the attackers will gather small bits of information so it can make their message feel even more legitimate. But one single click can compromise your systems. So it's about always verifying those unexpected requests. And some of them are very realistic looking. So I've been known to email my husband with a screenshot to say, what do you think? Because some of them really are quite clever. There's some basic techniques that you can look at. I mean, this is one that I've received. So, for example, would MBNA really address me as dear customer? They wouldn't. They don't, because that's not how they address people. There's usually a sense of urgency. There'll be a special link that you can click on. And like I said, there are key indicators. So one of them will be very over-the-top formatting. There'll be pressure and urgency. Click now. And some of these things would just be too good to be true. The other easy thing that you can do is hover your mouse over the link that's in the email. And you'll see that that link is not an MBNA link. Equally, you can hover over the email address at the top and you'll see that the email address will not be customercare@mbna.co.uk. It'll be something else. And it's absolutely critical that not just you know this, but all your staff know this and know how to protect themselves from such phishing emails and know what they need to do when they get such an email. Ransomware and malware. Basically, this is a way that the criminals will use to lock or encrypt your data. Sending an email or some sort of request, normally wanting something like Bitcoin, to get your data. Now, the problem with ransomware and malware is often this can be sitting in your systems for a long time before it actually activates. So there's cases where it's been there for up to 18 months. So even though you have backups, you know that you have your data stored somewhere, you can't guarantee that those backups are clean. But most infections start with that human action. So they start with clicking a link, opening an attachment, opening that fake update. So it's about ensuring that your staff know what the risks are for clicking one of those links in an email. Good cyber hygiene will reduce the risk. So that's ensuring that patches are applied regularly. I mean, my computer, I don't have anything complicated. I don't have any CRM systems. So it's quite easy and it's just set to auto update whenever there's an update comes out from Microsoft. But if you have more complex systems, you must ensure that patches and updates are applied regularly and as quickly as possible. Strong passwords are critical, and I'll come to that later. Multi-factor authentication. So I need my phone to sign into anything, and offline backups, and then reporting anything suspicious as early as you can. There's lots of examples of ransomware. So Change Healthcare, Royal Mail, MoveIt Supply Chains, MGM Resorts, WannaCry with the NHS. I mean, the list is endless for some really big cases. I've even had a different one of my clients had a ransomware attack. Thankfully, it was a side system that they weren't too worried about, but it did make them tighten up on some of their procedures. So it's just something to be aware of, and they don't just target the big players. The next example is data breaches and loss. And this is when unauthorized individuals can access the information. It might be through hacking, it might be through phishing, it could even be insider actions. It could be accidental or it could be malicious. Deletion, corruption, or just becomes inaccessible. Again, human factors are the biggest cause. Things like weak passwords, missent emails, poor access control, and also falling for that social engineering, falling for those phishing emails. Now, breaches can expose all manner of data, so it's absolutely critical that you apply strong controls. And if I give some examples of data loss, now those first five are where people have had breaches of their systems. So MoveIt was a hack, as was MGM. So they've all been technical hacking. But the bottom ones are human error, people leaving things on trains, in the post, on a bus stop, on the train again. So it's not just those technical things, it's human error of just leaving files in the wrong place. And unfortunately, in some cases, people finding the disk, but returning them to the Sun newspaper or some other media outlet as opposed to the MOD or to the NHS. And the final one was insider threats. So insider threats come from people who have had or have legitimate access, such as employees, contractors, or partners. And it might be intentional or it might be accidental misuse. So it could be human error, just missending data. And I'm sure we have all or know someone who has sent the wrong email to the wrong person by mistake. It could be through weak passwords or mishandling. But equally, it could be malicious members of staff who are disgruntled, who are planning to leave, who are taking that data or corrupting that data in some way. Again, this controls include strong access controls, so ensuring that only the right people have access to the right data, monitoring, training, and supportive culture to try to reduce the risk. And again, there's plenty of examples. So Tesla, Twitter, Sage, Capital One, they've all had insider sabotage in some way. But again, it's not just that sabotage in terms of theft of data, and big systems. It's also things like NHS administrators and nurses looking at patient records because they're interested, because they've had a fascinating celebrity patient, for example. So it's not just about systems theft, it's also about people looking at data that they shouldn't have access to. So what can be done? Well, there's two key elements. One of it is prevention and the other is response. So I'll look first at prevention. Now, the government, as I said, the government have done quite a bit recently for small businesses. And one of the things that they have just released, I'm going to put this across now so you can see. So I have gone up to the top. They have developed a cyber action toolkit for small businesses. Now this gives you, and Noreen's going to put the link for this in the chat so that you can access it yourself. This gives you a really handy toolkit for SMEs. So you can just simply click on the free toolkit, foundation layer, improver layer, and enhanced layer. So there's different layers of protection, and it gives you the key actions that you should be taking. So for example, if we look here, secure your business's email accounts, and it gives you steps to take and videos. So I would strongly, strongly recommend that you take a look at this website because it does give you some of the tools that you can take step by step. One of the first things is passwords, strong, unique passwords, and have multi-factor authentication. Keep your software and systems updated, which I've already touched on, and train your staff. Training staff is absolutely critical. And then the other bit is regularly backing up important data. Now, there is another government initiative which is also quite useful, which is Cyber Essentials. Now, I don't know, have you actually heard of Cyber Essentials?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so Cyber Essentials, I'm just going to go forward, see if anyone's actually, so there's two have heard of it. Have you actually implemented it? While you're doing that, I'll just talk about it. Cyber Essentials is a government scheme, a sort of basic certification scheme that's designed for SMEs. So I'm not sure if you've heard of things like ISO 9001, but a lot of certifications are very expensive and they take a lot of effort to maintain and to monitor and to implement. So the information security certification, the one that's sort of globally recognized, is ISO 27001. But to implement that would cost a few thousand every year. Cyber Essentials is about 450, I think, £480 a year. And it gives you a certificate that says you've reached a certain level of a certain level of implementation in terms of cybersecurity. What it aims to do is about strengthening your cyber hygiene, demonstrating that you take cybersecurity seriously, trying to reduce the likelihood of common attacks succeeding, and building a foundation for more sort of wider security improvements. Now, I'm not suggesting in this presentation that you go out and get Cyber Essentials. The reason I'm raising this is because it is another tool. It focuses on things like firewalls, secure configuration, software updates, user access control, and patch management. So firewalls work by protecting your system by controlling incoming and outgoing network traffic. Configurations mean that you're setting things up safely, removing unnecessary apps, disabling unused accounts, and basically tightening up default settings. User access control is about limiting access to only what people need for their role, ensuring that people that don't need access to particular folders and files don't have the access. So, for example, an HR folder would only be accessible by senior management or HR and not accessible to all staff. It looks at malware protection, the malware tools that you're using, and patch management. Now, the reason I raised this is because I hope this isn't too small for you, but this shows you the sort of questions that are there. And so it gives you that the questions are freely available. And again, we can put the link for the website in the chat, but it will help you to understand some of the things that you should be implementing to make sure that your business is secure. So, for example, do you have software firewalls enabled on all your computers, laptops, and servers? When you first received the router, it might have had a default password on it. Have you changed the default passwords on the firewall boundary? Have you changed the default password on all user and administrator accounts? So it just gives you a really good framework to work through to ensure that your business is thinking about all the things that it needs to think about to ensure that you've implemented good cybersecurity. Passwords. Now, there's so much debate about passwords and should they change, shouldn't they change, should they change every 60 days, 90 days? Basically, the latest NCSC guidance, that's the National Cyber Security Centre, suggests that you don't change your password every 60 days or 90 days because that's more likely to end up with problems and people reusing core bits. They say have strong passwords that are long, unique, and hard to guess, but not being reused. Really recommends multi-factor authentication and also password managers. So, for example, my Apple phone, every time I change a password, it recommends this string of gobbledygook. Absolutely key is avoiding sharing passwords or writing them down. And that's another reason why they don't suggest having a change every 60 days or 90 days, because then people do tend to write them down. One good way of doing it that is recommended is using 3 words and then adding in capitals, numbers, and special characters as needed. So this example, hippo, motorway, and bricks are the 3 words that I've used. Other people suggest the first line of a poem, for example. But going for length and complexity rather than regular changes will be more useful. Absolutely key is the knowledge that staff are the weakest link. Most cyber incidents start with human actions, whether that's clicking a link, opening an attachment, or missending data. And attackers will deliberately target people. They'll use social engineering, they'll use urgency and trust to try and get past any technical controls. In actual fact, insider mistakes are far more common than malicious insiders, but they can all cause harm. Busy, stressed, and distracted people are more vulnerable, so culture is a critical part of the security picture. But basically, strong technical defences, no matter how strong they will fail if people can't spot and report suspicious activity. So top tips for staff awareness: make sure that your staff are pausing before they click. Make sure they're reporting anything suspicious early. Even if it turns out not to be a problem, it's better to have more reports than none. Use strong passwords and multi-factor authentication. Be cautious, and making sure that your staff know that they can ask for help if things feel that little bit off. Okay, I'm going to move on now to ask about what can be done. So I'm going to just briefly check which cyber threat concerns you most of those that I've mentioned. Okay, data breaches. Yeah, and they are almost always accidental. I'm data protection officer for a couple of organisations, and all the data breach incidents we've had have been accidental or staff just not applying the right processes. Okay, how prepared do you feel to handle a cyber attack as you are at the moment? Okay, so hopefully now you've seen the website and you know where some of the stuff is there, you can develop a business continuity plan and also start to build some of the resilience in your structures by looking at some of the tools that are out there and are available. Do you have a business continuity plan? I'm hoping that nobody else has never heard of it. Okay, well, the business continuity plan does not have to be complicated, and no organisation is too small for a business continuity plan. I say that with, so we've written one for an organisation that has 2 members of staff. I don't have one, but I do, in that I've got all the resilience matters in place. I know where I would work if something happened. So it isn't written down, but I don't have a formal plan, but mentally I have prepared. But the smallest organisation that we've helped has been 2. So business continuity. Business continuity can help your business to recover from cyber incidents and other incidents as well. It should hopefully minimize downtime and financial losses, but also critically, it will protect your reputation and build customer trust. The plan should help you to be able to identify an incident and step in to stop the escalation. So by staff reporting suspicious emails, data loss, service disruptions, staff being aware that things are running slowly or crashing or behaving unexpectedly, missing data, all those things, normally human intuition is the first signal that something's not going right. So then what you need is a rapid and immediate response to be able to contain the impact. So, for example, that might be isolating the affected system. So if one computer is known to be infected, disconnecting that from the system. So it's not on the network, it's not on Wi-Fi, it's just simply shut down and not connected to anything. Preserving the evidence, not wiping devices or deleting the logs because you might need to be able to investigate exactly what has happened. And then having the ability to communicate with staff so that they know what they have to stop doing, what they have to avoid doing, or what they have to report. So that immediate response is absolutely key. And then possibly needing to stabilise operations by switching to manual workarounds or to alternative processes. And those things should be documented in your business continuity plan. Longer term, then you begin to look at restoring services, and that might be recovering systems from backups and verifying the data integrity, prioritising critical services. Hopefully you've done a BIA and know what your critical services are, and I'm going to come to that in a second. Testing restored systems before bringing them back online, because you must test things rather than just launching it out to the public. Absolutely key will be keeping staff, customers and partners informed with clear and timely updates. There might be temporary workarounds, so it could be working from home, it could be doing things manually, whatever your system is, but your staff need to know what that is and what they're doing and what expectations are in place. And then you need to manage the capacity, manage the workload and well-being of your staff, especially during extended disruption. Absolutely key will be communications. Any business continuity plan is focused on delivering key products and services, and that might be to key customers. So it might be that you can't provide services to all your customers immediately. And that should be fine as long as you are communicating, as long as you are explaining why things are happening in the way they're happening and when you're likely to be able to return to providing services for everybody. And then post-incident, you have to be able to conduct, it's important to conduct a post-incident review, and that will help you understand the root causes, but also help you understand your response and whether or not that could have been improved. And then you'll be able to update any policies as needed based on the lessons learned. Lessons are only learned if the lesson has been identified, root cause analysis done, and any changes implemented. People talk about lessons learned, but lessons learned aren't learned until you've actually made changes and tested that those changes have worked. Strengthen resilience. You might need to improve backups or access controls, and then any exercises, particularly for larger organisations. So the key steps in business continuity when you're doing the planning, the first part is to identify the critical business functions and contacts. So this is part of what's called the BIA, the Business Impact Analysis. And this is where, for example, if you make widgets, you say, right, so our critical business functions are manufacturing, our dispatch, our taking orders, and invoicing customers. They might be your key functions, and then you understand what each of those functions need. You're then going to look at what IT systems are needed for those functions. You then need to develop the actual incident response plan, making sure that you're backing up data regularly and securely, and testing that backup. There's no point backing up if you don't know that the backup will actually work. Now, people might ask about backing up data and how often you should do it. Now, I'm going to do, the next slide is a very old video of mine, which explains the difference between RTO and RPO. Let's see if this will work. So if I give the example, long time ago, I worked with an oil exploration company, and they had some oil exploration work going out in Azerbaijan. The drilling data cost a fortune to get, really expensive, huge volume of data. If they had a big problem at the site, at the exploration site, they wouldn't need access to that data straight away, but it had cost a lot of money to get the data and they would need it in the future. So the RPO, so the backup regime, they needed to have that backup regime down to sort of minutes so they didn't lose the data. But they didn't need it. So the RTO, the recovery time objective, was months. They didn't need access to it quickly. They just needed to know that it was safe. The site needed to be able to communicate with email. They needed to be able to communicate straight away because it was the only communications we had. So the recovery time objective was minutes. seconds. It had to have email. So the recovery time objective was minutes. But the RPO, we didn't need the historic emails. We just needed to be able to communicate quickly. So the RPO was a week or two. We could cope with losing emails. So by understanding that, it will help you to understand how often you need to back up your data. So it might be that your sales data, you might need it backed up every 6 hours, every 12 hours, every 2 weeks, depending on the sort of turnover. Only you can understand that, and only you can understand that from understanding what your critical activities are. Now, I've done a real whistle-stop tour of business continuity there, but as I said, it is all on the new website. I hope this presentation, I know I've gone slightly over time, I hope it has been useful. I will take questions at the end, but first of all, I'm going to ask, what is one action that you are going to take back to improve your cyber security? That's a good one. Yeah, staff awareness is absolutely key. You can have the most technical devices in place, but if staff don't do it right, if staff just click on that one link in the email, it will undermine everything you've implemented. Okay, I'll move on to the next slide. Okay, so summary, take action today. Look at your current risks around cyber and information security and your preparedness. Implement some of those key steps, and staff awareness, password management is going to be absolutely key. And stay informed with trusted guidance. We've given you a couple of links, and plan for business continuity. And again, that's all on the LRF website. Thank you very much for attending, and I hope that you'll be able to join us at the next webinar. Thank you very much indeed.